Hey guys, time for another Estates Treasures video. I titled this video Buried Treasures because we're going to be taking a look at items that you might pass by. Something like a Collins receiver, vintage Hewlett-Packard test equipment, big old high-end audio output tubes. I think most people would agree those have some value and are worth taking home. But then there's this. These are the junk boxes, the miscellaneous stuff, the small items, the stuff that could very easily end up in the trash. But for someone like myself who restores vintage equipment, this is some of the best stuff there. The other items are nice to have, they're cool, I'm very happy to have them. But these are the things I need, things that aren't made anymore, things I need to complete restorations. I'll give you a very simple example. That Mech 7-inch electrostatic TV I've been working on for a while now is missing a tube shield on the tuner. It's a specific type. It's a type that pushes down, it has a spring inside and twists and locks. He had a plastic container full of them. This is exactly what I need. If it wasn't for this, I would have to hunt around on eBay, ask around. It could take me weeks to track one down. Instead, I've got some right here. Let us go through these other boxes. And I only have an inkling of what's in these, so let's see what we can find. Okay, first up. This is a box that I threw a bunch of other smaller boxes into just as a means to get it home. Let's look at this first. More bulbs, yes. But these are small bulbs. These are the types of bulbs, for example. Let's see, I think there are some number 47s in here somewheres. They're number 27s. These are the types of bulbs you'd find in antique radios and vintage equipment of all types. PR12 is a flashlight bulbs. There, 47. That's probably the most common type of dial lamp you're going to find in a vintage radio. Very nice to have. And digging deeper, there's all manner of bulbs. Some of these might be made still, some not. Some I expect are more useful than others. And hey, look at this. We have a super handy cheat sheet that he probably wrote way back in the day. Decoder tells me what all the bulb numbers are and what voltage and current they run off of. Fantastic. Now if I need a bulb, I can just go in here instead of having to order one online or hunt around. And we have more bulbage. Ooh, alright. This man liked his neon bulbs. We saw a host of larger neon bulbs, some of which were used for night lights. It was revealed through some research, but these are smaller ones. These are used for indicators. These are used in test equipment. In particular, these guys. I'm always looking for these. You've seen these many times if you've been watching my videos and maybe you don't realize what the bulb looks like outside of the enclosure. This is the bulb that's used in my solar capacitor tester and some of my picture tube testers, particularly the B&K 440. This is the split type, where there are two sections to the neon bulb. And they're large. I think you can still get these. I think they are still made, but they don't look like this. They don't have a nice brass base. The internal elements are not as nice. So this is fantastic. This should keep me going for many, many years. I believe these are NE16s. The split dome, so what does that mean? That means if you have AC, both sides can light up. If you have DC, depending on the polarity, one side or the other will light up. So for example, in my capacitor tester, when you're charging up a cap, one side will light up. When you're discharging it, the other side lights up. Very nice to have some spares. These are reed relays, I do believe. Or reed switches, I should say, not relays. Or they could be bimetallic heat switches. I can't tell. or something else altogether. I just realized that there are two metallic elements in there, but they're not touching. There's a gap, but I thought they would have a gap side by side, so something like if you heat it up, the two sides can come together. But no, these are not touching. These are probably bulbs. These could be strobe bulbs, or strobe lamps. And I'm guessing if you apply a certain voltage across, it'll jump that arc and maybe ionize the gas inside. These could be xenon or something like that. That will require some experimentation to determine. Alright. I think I grabbed this just because it was so darn nice looking. It was still sealed in the box. I think it's a meter. Some good old vintage desiccant. Protexorb. You gotta have a catchy name. You can't just call it silica gel. No, Protexorb. The protective absorbent that eliminates moisture damage. That's a pretty hefty amount there. 4 ounces. Then we've got good old Excelsior packing material, and then paper packing material. You know it's military when they go to these lengths. And inside, at the very end of it, we have an RF ammeter. Unfortunately, they put tape on it decades ago, which is fused to it. As I mentioned earlier, the man had hundreds of meters. A lot of them were like this. New old stock, World War II surplus, maybe Korean conflict surplus. Don't really have any use for them immediately, but I wanted to grab at least some examples. Because, you know, I mean, they were still sealed from maybe the 40s. You don't see that every day. Alright, keep going back to more useful stuff. Potentially. Aha. For those of you who've been watching my videos on the Midwest Cathode Beamer, you know that I'm missing one of the plastic domes over one of the lights. I may be able to find a replacement in here. That wasn't the right type, but this is. This is exactly what I needed. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That is a buried treasure. Not for everybody, but for me. I have an immediate use for that, an immediate need, and there may be some other colors in here to make it a little bit snazzier. These are bulb holders. You put a bulb in there and then the lens, they come in different colors, lights up. These are unused. Doubt they've been made in a long time, and these are porcelain light bulb sockets, and here's a reflector dome. Well, basically this is all light related stuff. Continuing on, let's see. We got more, we got some bigger guys. Much larger bulbs. No shortage of lighting paraphernalia. Ooh, there's a nice red one I can use in that beamer. Alright, so we can have plenty of fun with indicator lights. I should have, if I ever should need to replace some, I think I'm pretty well covered. Now, something else I'm always on the lookout for, controls. Even when you can find them, I mean, they still do make potentiometers. High quality ones, high wattage ones, oddball ones can get really expensive, 20, 30 bucks or more. Like if you recall, for that Philco 90 I needed, what was it, a 1 or 2 meg logarithmic taper pot. Well, here's a 2 meg pot right here. If this is logarithmic taper, I could have used this. Saved myself 15 or 20 bucks, whatever I paid for it. Downside, of course, is you have to dig all through all these and find what you're looking for. You know, something like that. Where would you find something like that these days? Have to hunt around surplus sites, eBay again, ask around, and hope you get lucky. And more. And more and more. I mean, it would be great if Central Lab was still around and making these. And then you could just order one up, a 1 meg taper C2. I don't know what C2 is, but this could be logarithmic taper. Again, this might have been perfect for the Philco 90. I was, spent so much time tracking down. Oh, and I like these. the universal shafts. So what does that mean? Notice it's got all kinds of slots and grooves and whatnot. Over the years there were a number of different types of shafts. There's the full circle, and then there's knurled, where it has slots in the shaft and a knob would push down on it to it and grip into it. And then there's the type that Philco had, where it's not a half moon, it's like a 3/4 kind of thing. And to do that with this, you'd slice off part of the shaft. I think there were, yeah, there's even instructions in here. Apparently you can just take a screwdriver and slice off a bit you don't need. Oh, cool. So, fantastic. Pots and more pots. One of the universals. And then there's this box, which is about 20 pounds of stuff. Ooh, what all's in here? Well, I can see right away. Tube sockets, unused, very nice to have, including some ceramic type. These are really nifty if you want to do any DIY stuff. It's like a little breakout box for a tube. So you can, it's like a breadboard, you can attach wires to this and stick your tube in there and experiment without having to actually do any soldering. It's a whole mess of 5347 10 volt Zeners wired in series. I'm guessing that's like maybe an experimental replacement for some type of gas regulator tube. Actually, it's a giant Zener diode. Connectors, a little patch from microphone to 1/4 inch. Microphone jack. Microphone, I think. Bits of plastic. Bulb socket of some sort. Or no, it's a shaft coupler. Ceramic. I guess the idea is you could attach two shafts together, but isolate them electrically with the porcelain in between. Gigantic ferrite core. I think you get the idea. Part of a scope probe. It's just anything and everything. Ooh, nice vernier. Planetary drive action. Maybe a 10-to-1 reduction ratio. Tube socket, shroud for connector, plug of some sort, shaft coupler, more microphone connector action. I guess, yeah, these two would go together. Lots of tube sockets. You know what we have to do? We just have to go for it. Oh boy. What the heck are these? Well, these are tubes at first. Apparently there are 15 dB things. H-pad. WU Telco. I'm guessing these would reduce a signal by 15 dB or maybe boost it by 15 dB. No use for, probably ever, but interesting. Tons of coil related stuff in here. And coils. Ferrite cores all over the place. A lot of homemade, home wound coils. Not something I'm into, but if you're going to do some DIY radio stuff, Definitely handy. Why did I dump all this out? Because I know it needs to get sorted through. I want to pull out the tube sockets and separate them from the ferrite cores, etc. Early transistor from the 60s, I'm guessing. I'm surprised for somebody who's so organized that all this stuff would just be thrown together like this. You never know what's going to be in here. Some matched parts. I'm sure these go to some type of test equipment. I think they're varactor diodes or some such. They only have 2 leads, but they look like transistors. Lots of test equipment stuff. Tip jacks, phono plugs, red crayon. Ooh, a whole mess of diodes. These are germanium diodes, like 1N34As. That would be awesome. They seem to have absolutely no markings on them whatsoever. Well, there's a letter N, and that's it. But we can test them, find their characteristics. Wow. April 1968, Unitrode. It's packaging. I think those are, I don't know what the diodes may be, but incredibly tiny. I don't even want to try getting those out. I think the weight was all these ferrite cores. There are a lot of them in here and some pretty hefty. Frequency ferrite bead replacement. Yeah, there's some weight right there. Well, I will keep digging. I'm not going to bore you while I spend an hour going through all this stuff. If I find anything especially interesting, of course I will show you. And there are some other containers to go through. Alright, so how do we do? What buried treasures, what hidden gems were revealed? Well, one, got a whole coffee can full of tube sockets, mostly unused. Bakelite, ceramic, phenolic, 7, 9-pin, 4-pin, octal. Good stuff. Good stuff. We have another coffee can full of powdered iron cores, mostly toroids. Honestly, I really don't have any use for these, especially not knowing the characteristics of them. I'll hang on to them for a while, but I really don't really have a use for these. This coffee can is just a free-for-all. All sorts of interesting doodads in here. Here's a form with a tube socket on the end for building up a little circuit. Here's another one. I think this is could be a coil form. All manner of connectors and sockets, banana jacks. I got enough Fein stock clips to last the rest of my life. All sorts of great stuff for the DIY person. Universal joints, couplers. What else? A couple of these guys, very handy for troubleshooting. We got a 7 and a 9er. This one, I don't know, it got chiseled away a bit for some reason. So what do you do with these? Well, if you want to troubleshoot a circuit without having to pull out the chassis and flip it over to probe around, you pop the tube out, stick this in the socket, stick the tube back in there, and then you can measure your voltages while the circuit is operating or clip a scope onto it without having to pull the chassis out. They call those socket extenders. And this was quite a surprise. A whole mess of, what do you call these? Taps. I always forget which is a tap and which is the die, but things for threading a hole. So you would drill a small hole and then insert this and rotate it around, and it would cut threads into the hole. There was 20 or 30 of them in there, in slightly different sizes, all small. Was not expecting that. Also, some of these very nifty things. So you want to build a little device for testing components, you can push your component lead down onto these. Like those cheapo universal testers that are all over eBay, where it'll tell you if it's a resistor, capacitor, diode, and tell you the characteristics of it. You could enhance it by using a couple of these, and then you can push your device under test onto these. We also have some nice machined IC sockets. A whole bunch of these. I have more than what's in here. They're gold-plated pins of some sort, unused. I don't know what these would go for. I assume you would put your wire into this end. Maybe it would protrude a little bit through that hole, and then you'd maybe solder, put some solder in that cup. And then these would go into something. If anybody recognizes that type of connector, please let me know, because I don't know what they go with. Semiconductors, all manner of early semiconductors. I don't know if these guys are germanium or not. I hope they are. If they are, I'm probably set for life. But even if they aren't, I did find a bunch of 1N34s and other type of early diodes. Let's see, where did I put that? Ah, here we go, they're right in front of my face. 1N34s, we definitely have a number of these, and a lot more earlier styles. Here's a big old one. Angstrom, I think it says on there. A whole bunch of the glass enclosed point contact type. Some have full leads, some are a little clipped off. Why do I care? Why would I need these? Actually, a number of TVs use these for detector diodes. Here's another early type, another one of those. Oh, it's not Angstrom, it's Transitron. Of course it is, Transitron. And other early type diodes. I guess these are Zener diodes, top hat type, I think they call these. Some nice gold-plated diodes. Early transistors, probably all germanium. It's a 2 and 1893 from 66. But this is a really old school one. It's a Philco from 62. 2N672. I do have some earlier ones. I have not discovered them yet. I saw them there and stuck them in my pocket. I'm pretty sure they're here somewhere. Like early Bell Lab types, probably from the early 50s or something like that. It's a little bit later, but it's still a pretty early type. You may not have seen this packaging style before. Yeah, Philco made transistors. Yeah, they did go bankrupt in '61, but they continued on, and they were a defense contractor, and they made computers, and they made semiconductors. These are some early Zener diodes, I guess. So I'll have to dig through these and see what the part numbers are and try to identify what the characteristics are if I can. There's some other early types. Oh, it's more of those. Transitron, these are 1N140s. Pretty sure those are germanium. They look pretty ancient. I don't make germanium diodes anymore, not to my knowledge. That's why I want them. I do occasionally need them. Some radios, too, need them. Also, some what look to be early power transistors, Motorola. Although they don't have a 2N number, they have a 1N. So these could be some type of diode, I suppose. 1N2826, 1N2820. I'll have to Google those numbers. Another machine socket. And some nice early type transistor sockets. One of them is unused. This unusual kind of spring mount apparatus. Vector, maybe that was for an extra sensitive circuit. I don't know. And I think I showed these earlier on, these bags of matched parts. No idea what these go with. Alright, and one last thing, something else I was not expecting. For the Predicta enthusiast, the 17-inch in particular, these may look familiar. The vertical linearity control, anyone? That's one of the weak points in those sets. These often go bad. It's a 1.5K wire wound pot in the cathode circuit of the vertical output tube. I don't know if any of these are 1.5K, but some are close. I think there's a 2K, there's a 1K. I can add external resistors, and I think I can make some of these work. I'm pretty sure these are the right size, and they would mount directly onto the chassis without having to do an ugly hack. I have a bunch of them. I have not checked all the values yet. I'm hoping at least some of these are in the right range that I can use them. That's about it for that box, but that's plenty. It's more than I was expecting. Next up, he had a lot of cassette tapes. Hundreds and hundreds of them. Mostly used, they had stuff recorded on them, but I did find some that were still sealed, so I grabbed these because these are Type 2 high position metal, I believe. It's been a while since I've used cassettes, sorry. I'm a little rusty in the terminology. Maxell XL 290 position IEC Type 2 high. Of the ones I saw, these seem to be the ones that were high quality, and I know with the hipster crowd and whatnot, cassettes are popular again for whatever reason, and I think they're even being manufactured again. But I think these might have some value, so I grabbed them. Same goes for this. So he had probably literally millions of screws and nuts and washers, and given time and space I would have grabbed more of them. But again, I went for the stuff that seemed like needed to be saved the most, so I went through the more unusual hardware, so I got a lot of brass stuff. So these caught my eye. I think these are solid brass. That's not something you see too often, is solid brass, large nuts and bolts, or screws and bolts, I should say. Terminology difference between a screw and a bolt. I don't know. To me, if it's got a hex head, it's a bolt. And if it's got a Phillips or a Robertson or a slotted screwdriver, it's a screw. Basically, they're machine screws. Ditto. These are smaller ones, and there's some nuts and washers mixed in there. So I got these because they're somewhat unusual. You still can't get brass screws, but they are expensive, so I figured I should get them. A ton of washers. What would I use brass washers for? Sometimes in radio projects, something that is more visible, or if the original was brass, I try to replace it. Some of these have, I don't know what you call those, kind of recessed screw heads. Where they would go into a bevel cut hole. More the same. Oh, and these caught my eye because I was doing a cabinet project years ago, and I was scrambling for what these were called, and some of you filled me in that they are T-nuts, or I think Tenorman nuts. Basically, you drill a hole and you tap these in. I use them a lot in furniture, like underneath the bottom of sofas and whatnot. You'd screw a leg into. Obviously, they'd be a bigger version than this, but that's what those are. And some of you expressed interest in seeing vintage packaging. This isn't too ancient, but I'll give you a good look there. We do have some stuff coming up that's a bit more interesting packaging-wise. Like this. So here's just a real oddball assortment of stuff. We talked about tools earlier. There are still more tools to come. Some of these boxes are a bit more haphazard. By haphazard, I mean they just have a mix of stuff in them. Okay, so this is an extender for Tektronix scopes. I have 3 scopes waiting out in the garage to be looked at. They're all the same model. The number escapes me right now, but this fits onto them. It's got a diagonal cut. I'm not sure exactly what that's for. Why wouldn't it just be straight through? I don't know. Maybe it helps with viewing the display. Nibbling tool. Trims, notches, and cuts. Edel Tool Company, Harwood Heights, Illinois. I remember, when I was a teenager and I couldn't afford real tools, I used the nibbler tool a lot to cut out panels and whatnot. Basically, if you can't afford a chassis punch, you drill a hole big enough to get the head of this in there, and you start nibbling. It lets you cut away steel, a small chunk at a time. So if you want to cut out a big circle, you just kind of nibble your way around. It's very time consuming. You're left with rough edges, and you'll need to go over the file afterwards. Speaking of chassis punches, that is something I've wanted to get a set of for a long time, and I searched all over this place, and I eventually found some. In particular, I wanted to find these Greenlee chassis punches. I think they still make these. They're not difficult to find. You get sets of them all over on eBay, and I think they still make them, but they're expensive. So whenever I go to garage sales, estate sales, I try to find them. Boy, there was one in Chicago a few years ago where the guy did have a lot of nice heavy-duty tools, but they were just asking a ridiculous amount of money, like what they would have cost new, so I had to pass. The 1 1/8 inch diameter. So what are these? So if you want to cut a hole in a sheet of steel, say for a tube socket, which is one of the main applications for these, I think, is if you want to build your own tube amp or whatnot, you start with a steel chassis that's got no holes in it. That's what I'm trying to say. You need to cut holes for the tube sockets, which are pretty large holes, too big to use it too big to cut with a drill bit. So you would cut a hole big enough for this bolt to fit through. And then you take this and you put 1/2 on either side of it, put this down through the middle, and you start cranking away with a big old wrench. This has sharp edges on it. It's hardened steel. Eventually, that will punch through your steel chassis. These have seen a bit of use. I don't know if well, I'm sure they can be sharpened. They probably need to be. This is a smaller version. That might be for like a 7 or a 9 pin socket, and this might be for an octal socket. I'd have to measure to see if that's what these are. I don't recall the exact dimensions you would need for tube sockets. A little instruction booklet in here. Oh, I just caught my eye immediately. A hydraulic knockout punch driver. That would make life easier. 11 tons ram pressure. Instead of having to crank down on a wrench, you just pop that in there. So we go step 1, drill or punch a hole through the metal. Insert drive screw and die, open it towards there. Basically, they say to do what I did. You drill a hole, you thread the parts through there, and you turn with a wrench until metal is cut. Do not operate dry. Lubricate punch and threads. I did not know that. And they do have sharpening instructions. Which leads to another topic for another day. I did get a bench grinder over there, a vintage one. There's all the different sizes and model numbers and stuff. Looks like they have square punches too. Cool, never seen those. I hope you guys can read this. Anyways, yeah, Greenlee chassis punches. Been around a long time. Very nice things to have if you're going to do any type of DIY chassis work. A solder pullet. I now have 3 of these. These are solder suckers. So prime it. Got Teflon tip. Put it next to your molten solder. Hit the button. Cool thing about these is these are still made. I think the company was recently acquired, but they're still making these. They have not changed in decades. And they sell all the parts you would need. There's O-rings inside and cleaning kits and such to keep these going for a long time to get replacement tips. So cool. It's old school, but these work really well. That's why they've been making them for probably over 50 years. We got some spaghetti tubing. So unlike heat shrink tubing, I do believe this stuff does not shrink. These are the only 2 colors I could find, red and green. But again, yeah, for you vintage label enthusiasts, here you go. Burnback Radio Company Incorporated, New York City. Meters. The man had hundreds and hundreds of meters. I only grabbed a few. A lot of them were very specialized, like logarithmic RF amps or just strange military stuff. I grabbed the ones that were the oldest, that looked the coolest, and that looked like they might be somewhat useful. This one caught my eye because the pointer is very delicate. It has a hole drilled through at the end, and the nice vintage font. It's a triplet and Big Light enclosure. I believe that's Big Light. Similarly, triplet with a gigantic pointer, with kind of a spade on the end of it. Triplet Electric Instrument Company, Bluffton, Ohio. And the last one. Oh, I thought I grabbed 2 of these. I thought the other one was somewhere. I was surprised you didn't see this. It's a VU meter, but this is ancient. I thought it'd be cool to get a couple of them and make like a stereo VU meter. Volume unit, I believe that stands for. Weston Electric Company, Newark, New Jersey. It's just so primitive, it almost looks like that's just a... Well, it is a sheet of paper that was printed on and inserted in there. Whereas some meters like these, it's I think a sheet of metal that's screen printed. This looks like it's a piece of paper that was put through an offset printer or something. Oh, let's keep going. Buffing wheel compound. Again, this would go with the bench grinder I picked up. Sears and Roebuck Craftsman. Pretty old. The only buffing wheel he had was really worn out, so I didn't bother taking it. There you go. It's sort of like chalk. Very fine grit. Helps you polish things. Felt. Some nice felt pads. I figure, hey, why not? For buffing or for replacing on the bottoms of things like microphones and whatnot. TV antennas often had a felt pad underneath them. Over time they get completely worn off. So I can see he nibbled away at the end of that. I imagine he was cutting off pieces to replace felt feet on things. Alright, knobs, or not knobs, plugs. He had a few of the old Acorn type, old school electric plugs. Like you saw me using my Philco 90 recently, like this guy. But this one at least has the cardboard insert. It was missing from most of mine. Not sure if this is used or not. Hard to get that out. I don't think this has ever been used. And here are some other later styles. We have a hole saw. So this would be for wood. Whereas those chassis punches are good for metal. If you want to cut a large hole in wood, you get yourself something like this. 1 3/8 inch. Albertson and Co., Sioux City, Iowa. It's kind of odd on the other end of it. If this comes apart, doesn't look like the standard thing you'd put into a drill. Sort of split into 3 pieces. Sucker is sharp with some offset teeth. That'll tear a pretty good hole in something. Oh, if you're wondering why it has the center part, you would drill a pilot hole first to keep this hole centered as you go through. Speaking of circles, if you want to make a larger circle up to 6 inches in diameter, you get this guy. The Pawwood Circle Cutter. The ideal circle cutting tool, American made, General Hardware Manufacturing Company Incorporated, New York. For cutting holes in sheet steel, brass, aluminum, wood, plastic, hard rubber, fiber, and other materials. Get it from Ace Hardware for $5.50. So, how does this work? Same as these others, you drill a pilot hole first, and that's what this would fit into. Or maybe you could just use a punch to mark the center, because it has a bit of a drill bit in the middle, it seems. You would adjust this for your circle diameter, tighten it down with this applied hex wrench, put it into your drill, and then this would cut it. It's a very, very sharp point. I can't imagine going through thick steel with that, though. I've never tried using one of these. I could see brass, plastic, wood. To some extent, it'll probably tear the wood up a bit. Aluminum, yeah, sure. But steel, I don't know. I have to give it a try someday. Why would you want to cut a large circle? Well, for those meters we just saw. They very typically have a circular back. Almost done with this box. Vintage hand drill, Shopmate reversible. I'm guessing that's the reverse action. I'm a little torn on this. I grabbed it because it's a cool vintage looking drill, but practically speaking, I don't know that I would ever use this. We'll fire it up, see how it goes. Why? Well, it's very heavy, and I've got several more modern drills. One cordless, Bosch I use all the time, and a couple plug-in variety, Craftsman. They weigh a lot less than this, and they work quite well. I'm sure the chuck action on this is very nice, but as far as how well the motor works, I don't know. And just this is very heavy. I don't know that I'd want to be using this for a lot of any length of time. But it was cool looking, so I had to grab it. Last thing in here are some headsets. All very tangled up. Here we go. First I thought these were wood, but now they're wood grain. They're some type of plastic. Little Spitfire Tower Manufacturing Company, Boston, Massachusetts. They have a very vintagey 1/4-inch plug on the end. What would you use these for? Old school radio, crystal set maybe, or Morse code setup. Basically a radio or device that has a very high impedance output. It's another type. Telephonics, maybe 300 ohm. Huntington, New Jersey. A little bit newer than that other set. $550 ohms, high Z. Or these might have been for telephone exchanges, it just occurred to me. Which actually seems very likely given his area of interest. Headset, Stoddart, manufactured by Telephonics. Same on the other end. Low impedance, 35 ohms. Don't know what I'll use these for, but I figured, hey, why not? Alright, I got it plugged in. Let's see what this bad boy can do. Works. Peculiar odor too. Kind of reminds me of childhood with my dad's old electric drill. Oh yeah, there's just sparks inside there. Starts up. A lot of torque. That is not reverse. I wonder how you do. Oh. It's got a red button. It says R. You have to flip it. Yeah, it works. Cool. So is that it? Are we done with the miscellaneous stuff? No, of course not. How about we take a look at this stuff? More random miscellaneous things that I grabbed. Got a lot of cigar boxes filled with things. It's a neat thing just to have the cigar box. As the label says, 1% resistors. Yes, that is what this contains, but they're not any old 1% resistors. These are ancient, old school 1% resistors. Years ago, I restored a, what the heck is the number? A tube tester, a I-177, something like that. Military type tube tester, World War II era. It used precision resistors, very similar to this. I believe these are wire wound. Yes, well, that would be confirmed. These are wire wound precision resistors. Acra ohm. There's a mouthful. Oh, better yet, Shellcross Acra ohm wire wound precision resistors. And the Shellcross Manufacturing Company, Collingdale, Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's what it sure looks like. Type BX196. I've never seen this particular type before. I've never heard of this brand before. What else? Well, obviously we have a bunch of these, and they're all wired together. These probably got pulled out of some type of test equipment. I'm sure the values have a meaning. So we have 1 meg, half a meg, 100K, 100K, 100K. So there's probably like some kind of rotary switch, and they control the range on something. Boy, they were a lot connected together. Come on. There we go. Detangle. Oh, 2%. What's that doing in here? Trying to look for the company name. MEPCO. And Instrument Resistors Company, Little Falls, New Jersey. Boy, a lot of companies I've never heard of. IRC, them I've heard of. They might even still be around in some manner. All these years, boy, this will be the first time I tell you this, because I've discovered this with a few of these items. I now know what IRC stands for. 50 years, well, not 50, didn't know what these were when I was a baby, but let's say for 30 years or so, I have not known what IRC stood for. The International Resistance Company, of course. I had no idea that they were based out of Toronto. I thought it was an American company. Ooh, what are these? Those are very strange. Almost looks homemade. Cal-ohm resistors. I'm guessing these, oh yeah, they're on Banana Jacks. 0.1%, is that, am I reading that right? Or is that just an odd way of writing 1%? Well, it says 1/10. It seems to me that it says 0.1%. I'll have to grab a meter and double check that. Although that would exceed the precision of my multimeter. Huh. I've never seen... It seems to me with these getting banged around and knocked around and plugged in and out, I don't know how well that 0.1% accuracy is going to hold up. Huh. I grabbed my trusty Fluke 27 FM. Let's spot check a few of these. It's supposed to be 500,000 ohms. Let's see. Okay. So I only have 3.5 digits on this, so that's as good as we're going to get for this meter. To do one of these, it's 250K. Oh, that's within 0.1%. All right. Couldn't resist this little container filled with small screws and nuts and insulating standoffs and whatnot, just because, well, you never know when you might need such things. So it goes for this. Some nice vintage brass screws, steel screws. More of the same in a pill container. These are little, oh, maybe for wood, maybe for metal, hard to say, but they are tapered, kind of self-tapping. Pencil lead, yes. I did take a course in drafting in college, and I do have a set of mechanical pencils and compasses and a French curve and all that good stuff, so I couldn't resist. And he has colors. It's not just black, like this. Mars Lumichrome Orange. I never had such a thing. I only had black when I was in school. Oh, and blue. Ah, cool. So you twist this a little bit to open the compartment and you get out your lead, then you twist it back to close it. Neat. And then we have files. We have files of files. Many small signed files. I have a small set of needle files. Now I am set with all manner and shape and size. Square and bastard and rat tail and flat and all sorts of files. and all barely used and virtually no corrosion. And at least one handle. I don't know if this, yeah, this is the type you can, so I can, basically you take these and you pop them into a handle, and there you go. Away you go. Definitely will have a use for these. For example, taking a potentiometer shaft and you want to make it from full round to not full round, so you can get your knob to fit on there properly. Good stuff. And the final thing in this little assorted assemblage here, Shark chassis punch set. Okay, it's made in Japan, it's not American, but it's got a lot of stuff. So just like the Greenlee punches, same deal, same idea. You drill a pilot hole. In fact, this is a Greenlee punch, so he's got a mixed set in here. You drill your hole, you put this through it, you start cranking down with your wrench, and you pop a hole out. 5/8 diameter. There's a much larger one. How do I get it out? Oh, this isn't the cutting part. This is, well, I don't know how well this goes together exactly. There's a little diagram in here. Fortunately, no instructions. I think I would just have to experiment a little. Alright, so somehow something like this goes over that, and then this goes in here for leverage. Maybe these threads into, yeah, this does thread into that. So I think this is your tool that you crank on, and then there are some assorted cutting bits. I guess this should have been threaded in there too. To back this out a little, I think it goes more like so. And this is the wrong piece to use on the other side, I think. Or not, I don't know. Maybe I just have it in there backwards. Yeah, maybe this makes more sense to go that way. So yes, you drill your hole, you get this through the center, you put this in there, you start cranking down, and eventually this will pierce through your sheet and cut it. They've been used, a little dull, but they could be sharpened. So, nice thing to have. Nice thing to have for sure. Alrighty, I think this is the final box of just miscellaneous random stuff. Alright, we have a nice metal box here. It says polystyrene capacitor kit on the label, but I don't think that's what's in here. No, what this is a nice assortment of banana jacks and binding posts, quarter-inch jacks. That's a really old school looking type. Weston Electric Company, Newark, New Jersey. Never seen one that looked like that before. That looks pretty darn early too. Imagine some of these are for telephone switchboards. Rather than quarter-inch audio applications. It's a rather ancient looking binding post. Alright, so that's what that contains. Probably the box as much as the contents of the box. That is really well made. Let's loose in there. You need to have a bunch of these. It's heavy, it's steel, but very well crafted. Looks like it's probably held meant for index cards or something originally. Okay, with that out of the way. High voltage probe. of course, I'm not going to pass up on a high voltage probe. Reads 3% low on triplet VTVM, 850 DC only. That can't mean this is only good for 850 volts DC. I mean, no, this is a 40,000 volt probe. At least that's for sure what it looks like to me. It'd be for VTVM, because it's got the old school type microphone kind of connector thing on it. That will require some experimentation. Ooh, okay, melted pretty bad on the side too. But hopefully it's still serviceable. What else? More tube sockets. Or it looks like maybe these were wired for adapters of some sort. It looks like it was made out of a busted tube. Yeah, a lot of these are. Why not? Printer in there. I could probably use that in my Philco 90. I still need to find a 4-pin speaker plug for it. Oh, what else? Now I know these are drill bits. So we had one really nice large drill press. I couldn't take it, plus I think it was already spoken for anyways. By meaning I couldn't take it because it was just too darn big. But there were a number of sets of drill bits, and my buddy said, hey, you got to take one of these. He said they don't make drill bits like they used to. And I'll take his word for that. I mean, these seem like they're very sharp. I'm sure they're made out of some really quality steel. Pretty comprehensive set too, for, well, mid-range of sizes anyways. I'm not sure what the difference is between these .358, .368, .377, .386, .397. I mean, it's not your typical like 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, 32nd inch. So I'm sure I will get some use out of those. I just have to translate those dimensions into something I'm more familiar with. Oh, what else? What else? Well, something was in there. Something from Heath Company. Like maybe this probe was in there, which is a Heathkit scope demodulator probe. So there's probably a germanium diode in there and some type of filter. So you could probe an RF and it would translate it to something a meter could read. Plug that into your VTVM. Or oscilloscope that uses this type of probe. So you can take your low bandwidth scope and still poke around an RF circuit. What is this? Assembly and operation of the Heathkit RF probe. So everything I'd ever want to know about it will be contained within here, and it's probably all went into this box. Very good. What else? Ooh, I think I see that little vial of early transistors I've been teasing. But before we get to that, what else? What else? A Simpson model 0150 probe, I think that's what that says. DC AC ohms. This would be for VTVM. Simpson VTVM. Again with the early type connector. These things are hard to come by these days. You have to resort to making your own. Little mini glue gun. Pretty nasty looking, but at the time I couldn't find my glue gun when I had recently given up on trying to find my glue gun while I was rebuilding that mech. I went out and bought a new one. But hey, no, I've got that as a backup potentially. I believe these are front filters for scopes. Tinted plastic. You put on a scope face. It's got the lines etched into it. You know, a grid pattern for making measurements. I'm not going to take it out, but I'm pretty sure that's what that is. Geez, I think these are old decals you can peel off and put onto the plastic. Probably don't work too well anymore. Yeah, that's exactly what they are. It's a 1 centimeter grid scope pad. I guess you can make your own custom scope face with that. Little box. Oh, yeah, this has early transistors in it. Save that. Oh yeah, I do remember seeing this. Something for teletype. The man also collected some teletype equipment, all of which was gone by the time I got there. But this is a maintenance kit for teletype machines. And it contains pure powdered copper. And 2 types of resin. So it looks like you would combine A and B and mix in the copper, and you'd make yourself some conductive epoxy to repair. It'd be like, like fixing your defrosting grid on the back or on your car. It's a super fine powdered copper. Kind of pretty. No idea if the epoxy is still any good. It's from 1969. I just thought it was a neat thing to have, so I grabbed it. The Able Stick Adhesive Company, that's a good name, Able Stick, and Able Bond. It doesn't say it's epoxy, but when I see an A and a B component, I gotta assume it is, and it's it's still liquidy. Who knows, it might still work. But if you had something that broke and it needed to be conductive, I guess the idea was you could repair it with that. We have some telephone insulators. I wasn't going to take these, but he said, you've got to take some of them. It says, like this one says patent 1893. I don't know how old it is, but that's when it was patented. Hemingray. I know people collect these. I'm not really into them, but this one, unfortunately, is kind of chipped up. Also, patent 1893 Hemingray. And final, same deal. I can certainly display them. I've broken plenty in my life, that's for sure. And then wire. He had a lot of wire, but I passed on most of it because either it was unlabeled, like this, or it was lower voltage stuff, like telephony stuff. If I'm going to rewire a radio or TV, I've got to know what I'm using. It's got to have a certain voltage rating and characteristics, so I don't know. I've heard this stuff is good for winding coils if you want to make your own, like AM loop stick antenna or something like that. But that's what most of this is. A solid conductor, insulated. I think this might be the cotton insulation with lacquer or something like that. It's probably not rated for very high voltage. But this I certainly wanted to grab. Now, if this is the right gauge, I could have saved myself some money to rewind. What's 35? Yeah, this probably is close enough that I could use this in that Philco 90 speaker field coil that, yes, I still need to get back to. I will get back to it. This is probably 5 pounds of enameled copper wire. Nice find. And then there's this, which is ribbon copper. You'd use this in a transmitter for winding a big old power inductor. And I love the spool that it's on. This is wood and aluminum. The Canthal Corp, Stamford, Connecticut. Eighth, I guess, yeah, it's 1/8 inch wide. That seems about right. Neat stuff. Oh, there's some smaller spools of wire and a bunch of powdered iron cores. I mentioned loop stick antennas. Well, that's That's what you could make out of these. Here's one right here. For AM radios or directional antennas, I suppose, or, well, any manner of electromagnetic experimentation you could do. Old school Tektronix scope probe, 10 mega ohm, 12.5 picofarad Tektronix probe. There's a trimmer cap in there you would adjust to compensate for the coax, I believe. We've got a pair of them. Pretty ancient. I had to grab this when I saw it because it is, well, one, it's a very nifty, really old dovetailed wooden box. A very rough wood, lightweight, like boxwood or something. Doorknob caps. Pretty much one in every TV. 500 picofarad, 20,000 volts, super standard, very common, I mean, in vintage TVs. And some other miscellaneous doodads, looks like a little homemade banana jack to alligator type thing. Another component, whippy thing. Some early transistors fell into the mix. Or at least one did. It fell down inside. So all manner of high voltage capacitors. Well, maybe not all manner, but a bunch of doorknob caps anyways. He probably had them for transmitter, radio type stuff, which they were also used in. But I care about it for TV. I'm trying to get this guy out because it's the biggest one. 500 picofarad, only 10,000 volts, but it's got some kind of strap on it. So is that one electrode and that another? Probably. Strange way to assemble one. There's a transistor that fell in there. There we go. Alright, let's get to the transistors, because that's the last thing we have to talk about. I don't know much about early transistors, but when I saw these, I think they're pretty old. Early to mid 50s, early transistor. That's the container I found them in. And that's what they look like. I'm pretty sure I've seen somebody on YouTube talking about these CK721s, Raytheon. I know those were very early type, but these others are some other CK, no, it's another 721. Maybe these all are, yep. Alright, those are all 721s, and then this guy is a 2N35. That's a pretty early number there. I think there are a few more. So these would be point contact, maybe hand assembled. Germanium, of course. I would not try using them in anything. They didn't work that well to begin with when they were new. It's another 721. And this isn't. Oh, these are not transistors. What the heck are these? Sylvania, made in USA. I can't really read it, but there are 2 points that are coming together. Is this like a lightning arrestor, gas discharge, something? So clearly we got a connector on that, and we've got 2 metal discs coming out, and there they come to a point in the middle. Mini X-ray tube? Probably not. And this is basically the same thing, but a little bit more info. Made by Bomac, made in USA. CBNO724E, maybe? Same type of construction. I don't know what the heck these are. They could be some sort of light device that glows. They look a little fancy to just be a lightning arrestor. Maybe they're used in transmitters if there's to protect like from excessive voltage. In other words, these might be designed to arc over a certain voltage level to protect something. That's my guess as to what these are. Alright, boy, we covered a whole lot of ground in this video. Everything from wire to early transistors, to drill bits, to chassis punches, to precision resistors, to glass insulators. Wow. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this journey of discovery. Definitely found some buried treasures, some hidden gems, especially since I have a bunch of predictors coming up to work on, and I know some of them need a linearity control. I'm hoping some of these will work out. And so much of this stuff I know I will find a use for. If I don't already have a need now, I will at some point. That is going to be it. Thanks for watching.